You're listening to the Everything Jewish 10 Minutes at a Time podcast, where you'll learn about every Jewish topic imaginable in about 10 minutes. Today's topic is the Oslo Accords. Before we start, a quick apology about my Hebrew pronunciation. If anything sounds a little crooked, like a bagel that tried to become modern sculpture halfway through baking, remember the history is real, but the voice delivering it is an AI voice. Somewhere a Hebrew teacher is sighing and reaching for strong coffee. Now picture the early 1990s. The Cold War had just ended, the Berlin Wall had fallen, and people around the world were suddenly talking about peace agreements that once seemed impossible. In the Middle East, Israelis and Palestinians had been locked in a long and bitter conflict. The Oslo Accords were an attempt to change that situation through negotiation. Think of them as a diplomatic experiment, a very complicated effort to replace decades of violence with dialogue and mutual recognition. The story of the Oslo Accords begins quietly in Norway, far from the headlines and the television cameras. In 1992 and 1993, secret meetings took place between Israeli and Palestinian representatives. These meetings were not official government conferences at first. They were more like backchannel conversations organized by academics and diplomats who believed that informal dialogue might succeed where formal negotiations had stalled. Imagine two rival teams that refuse to speak publicly, but secretly send representatives to a quiet cafe to talk things through. That was the spirit of the Oslo talks. Israeli officials met with representatives of the Palestine Liberation Organization, often called the PLO. At the time, Israel had not officially recognized the PLO, so the idea of direct contact itself was groundbreaking. The Norwegian hosts provided a neutral setting where both sides could explore possible compromises. By 1993, those secret discussions produced a framework that became known as the Oslo Accords. The agreement involved mutual recognition between Israel and the PLO. Israel acknowledged the PLO as a representative of the Palestinian people, while the PLO recognized the state of Israel's right to exist. That exchange alone represented a dramatic shift in decades of political rhetoric. The Accords also outlined a plan for Palestinian self-government in parts of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. A new governing body called the Palestinian Authority would manage certain civil affairs and local security. Imagine a complicated shared apartment where two roommates are negotiating which rooms each person manages and how to handle the common spaces. The Oslo framework tried to divide responsibilities step by step while leaving some of the hardest questions for future negotiations. One of the most memorable moments connected to the Oslo Accords occurred in September 1993 on the lawn of the White House. Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat shook hands in front of the world, while United States President Bill Clinton stood between them, smiling like someone who had just pulled off the diplomatic equivalent of hosting the most awkward family reunion in history. That handshake symbolized hope for many people who believed the conflict might finally move toward a peaceful resolution. The image spread across newspapers and television screens worldwide. For supporters, it represented a new chapter where enemies recognized each other as negotiating partners rather than permanent adversaries. The Oslo Accords were not a final peace treaty. Instead, they created a process intended to unfold in stages over several years. The first phase focused on Palestinian self-rule in Gaza and the city of Jericho. Later agreements expanded that authority to other parts of the West Bank. Israeli forces withdrew from certain areas, while Palestinian police forces took responsibility for local security. The idea was that gradual cooperation might build trust and create conditions for a permanent settlement. Major issues such as borders, the future of Jerusalem, refugees, and settlements were deliberately postponed for later negotiations. Imagine trying to solve a complicated puzzle by first assembling the edges and leaving the centerpieces for later. Reactions to the Oslo Accords varied dramatically among Israelis, Palestinians, and observers around the world. Many people felt genuine optimism. Peace rallies, diplomatic visits, and international support created a sense that history might be turning toward reconciliation. At the same time, critics on both sides worried that the agreements gave away too much or too little. Some Israelis feared security risks, while some Palestinians doubted the agreements would produce real independence. Political debates became intense. Think of a giant family argument where half the relatives believe the plan will fix everything and the other half think it will make things worse. That atmosphere of mixed hope and skepticism surrounded the entire Oslo process. Tragically, the optimism surrounding Oslo faced enormous challenges. Violent attacks by extremist groups undermined trust between the communities. Each new incident made negotiations more fragile. In 1995, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated by an Israeli extremist who opposed the peace process. Rabin's death shocked Israel and the wider world, dramatically altering the political landscape. Imagine a major sports team losing its captain during the championship game. The strategy suddenly changes and the emotional momentum shifts. The assassination symbolized how deeply divided public opinion had become about the peace process. Throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, additional negotiations attempted to continue the Oslo framework. Meetings at locations such as Camp David sought to address the unresolved issues left from the original agreements. These talks tackled complicated questions about borders, security arrangements, and the status of Jerusalem. Despite intense diplomatic efforts, the negotiations struggled to produce a final agreement acceptable to both sides. The conflict entered new phases marked by violence, political change, and shifting international involvement. Historians often describe Oslo as a turning point that opened possibilities, but also revealed how complex the path to peace would be. Today, the Oslo Accords remain one of the most significant diplomatic efforts in the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Some analysts view them as a bold attempt that created important institutions and channels of dialogue. Others see them as an incomplete framework that failed to resolve the most difficult questions. Regardless of interpretation, the agreements changed the political conversation by introducing the idea of mutual recognition and negotiated compromise. They showed that adversaries who had long refused direct contact could sit down together and attempt to map out a different future. So the Oslo Accords remind us that diplomacy often works like assembling a complicated puzzle while the pieces keep moving. Progress can appear in small steps rather than dramatic breakthroughs. The negotiations showed both the possibilities and the limitations of political compromise in one of the world's most challenging conflicts. Thank you for listening to the Everything Jewish 10 Minutes at a Time podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who might like it, or leave a positive review so others can find the podcast. And if you are listening on YouTube, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to get new episodes delivered early and for special bonus episodes.